It is 5:30. I'd like to call the study session to order. The first item on the agenda is public comment period. If we have any public that would like to make a comment, we do ask that you step up to the podium and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on down to the roundtable discussion amongst council members. Does anybody have anything they'd like to discuss? Okay.
I was just gonna bring I was out for a walk yesterday afternoon on the riverfront, and the water level was extremely low. I don't know if anybody's been out there today, Doug, but you could like see the bottom. Is it back up? Okay. So,
It was buying a house, it was gone.
yeah, like all of the impoundment was like drained yesterday, so I'm not sure. With that, I just wanted to bring it up.
Sure, during the heavy rains, over the, Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday, we have to lower so we don't flood back. So that's part of our normal routine of managing the dam. When we get that much rain in that short of a time, we respond that way to be safe and sorry.
Thank you.
Dave, did you have something?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's much consideration for how the ordinance program interacts with the community and how we get community feedback.
Like when we pass an ordinance, or?
Yeah, when we're developing new ordinances and, are we aligning that to what the community's asking for? How do we get that feedback about, here's what the community's looking for? How do we know that we're doing the right things on those ordinances?
Well, some of the ways would be, of course, the way that we pass the ordinances with first and second reading, allowing for the public to input and comment on it. As far as like, I think when we develop an ordinance, kind of depends where it comes out of, or what's the issue that we're trying to address. Sometimes I think that comes up from committees, for if they're seeing an issue like parks or historic, or any of those that interact with the ordinances, if they feel they need something else or need something adjusted. But as far as the rest of the time, I'm not sure if it's, of course, you could always petition, any person in the public could always petition us to change an ordinance. And they could also do a voter initiative as well through our charter, if they wanted to change or remove an ordinance.
I'm wondering if there's like a plan for our ordinance program for how we know that we're doing the right thing for the ordinances. Is it aligned to a problem that we know? And I'm asking because we're revising so many ordinances tonight, and I'd like to know if we've got anything we've done to get community feedback on those. I know in tonight's packet, we don't have the red lines. So I was coming in from the public for first and second reading. I don't see what exactly is being changed or why. Is there any part of the program that deals with that?
And I guess, like Peter, I guess that's what the readings are for. If they have an objection or want to discuss it, that's what the first and second readings are for. It would be their opportunity to come in and make a suggestion or tell us something.
I can just say, as we were going through those ordinances with the review committee, we talked about whether they were necessary anymore, and those then went to not only staff, but then to the city attorney to see if they matched up with other municipality ordinances. So, there was some discussion about whether or not they were required, something we wanted to really continue with. Like, I know we had talked about the chicken ordinance in that review session, and then it had come up from an individual, and that's something that we adopted. So I feel that there is opportunity for feedback.
Yeah, I think the chicken ordinance is a good example of people in the community were looking for that. I could understand where there was a problem that needed to be addressed, but the other ordinances that I'm seeing, I'm just not seeing a community drive for it, and I want to work in the best interest of the community. I don't want to just take staff's word for it, because I'm here to work for the community.
Well, I will say personally, I just received an email from a community member mentioning or asking about vehicles and driveways. what the ordinance was for that. So I had copied and pasted and sent it to them and explained that they could use See-Click-Fix. So I think See-Click-Fix is another way that we're getting information. So people would fill out like, hey, there's grass is too long in this area or that. I mean, it's all complaint driven. So if at some point we're not receiving complaints about a specific ordinance, that's something we could review, but.
Yeah, and I don't think, I think when someone brings up an issue, I think we can address that either if it's an ordinance that's in existence that they would like to see altered or changed or taken away, or if there's something like the chicken ordinance that they wanted, well, I guess that was a change. But I don't think we have the community driving what we're doing in our ordinances. I mean, there's ordinances that most people will never even think of that we have to consider and go through. So, I mean,
Well, isn't that an important part of compliance, though, that we've got an agreement with the community, yes, this is what we want you to enforce for ordinances, or this is what we want our ordinances to look like, and then they're more accepting of what we put in for rules?
yeah, but I don't think the average resident cares that much about our ordinances.
Or maybe our committees?
Well, the cemetery rule change came from the Public Spaces Commission.
Yeah, another good example of
We did
commission.
have-
So I feel like
And we did
do
have lots
that.
of community input on that.
But the ones we've got tonight, we didn't get that community input.
No, but a lot of those were, having a liquor license or liquor ordinance, which is something that's, necessary. We removed quite a few that we didn't need because they were covered by state law already. So, yeah, I feel that there's a opportunity for individuals to be involved.
There's the opportunity, plus that's partly why we're elected. It's here to represent them. And if we want, as an individual representative, to get more community feedback, sometimes we have to go out and reach out to the community ourselves. If we feel like you want to take a look at these, get your own group of people that give you feedback on it. But you are an elected official for a reason, was to talk and speak for the community. And sometimes it's nice to get more feedback from them, and that's why we do the first, second reading, if we want, and why we publish things, so that people can look at them in advance, and if they feel like it's wrong, come and talk to us about it. And if they really don't like something, to vote us out, or to put in a voter initiative to change an ordinance, or to remove an ordinance. That's all in our charter. It's not used too often, but it's actually not that many signatures needed to do it.
Okay. Well, that's the piece I see missing from tonight's agenda items, is just that community input. Is the community driving this? Like I said, it's not that I don't care what staff says, but I'm not inclined to do what staff says because I'm here representing the community. And I'd also like to know when we're gonna put those revisions online. Because right now, we haven't updated those for a while.
We had talked about that at the special meeting, that when Chris Tapper was our clerk, we had decided we were gonna go with a new, municipal code website. And then we had discussed as a council that we were gonna wait to do that until everything had been updated and codified, because you have to pay every time that you update something. So that goes back a few years, and I believe that's why we haven't done anything over the last few years.
Will we be updating those every year from now on, and like we used to?
Yes.
And when will we get those, if we pass them tonight, when will they actually be online updated?
Yeah, so if you pass them tonight, I believe it's 20 days is when it goes into effect. We will submit these to Municode. That's part of our annual fee with Municode and they will, update them to the supplement history table on Municode. Just a little more information on what Delora was talking about is when Chris was here, we went out for bid to get quotes to look at new online provider for our code of ordinances. Municode is an organization, General Code is another one. They offer some other things like agenda management, packet management, stuff like that. And at that time, we decided to kind of hit the pause button on that project until we go through all of our ordinances, so everything's refreshed at one time. I think after tonight, if these set of ordinances or chapters are approved through ordinance 511, I think it is. Roughly 2/3 of our ordinances will be done. We estimate we should probably be able to wrap up the rest by the end of this year. The remaining ordinances, a lot of them are very simple according to our city attorney. There's only a couple, more involved ones that we're gonna have to address. So, we will get these, added to the updated, up to Munich code after council, if council approves them tonight.
I just wanted to have that discussion, and I don't want to take up too much time at the agenda item, but just so council is aware of why I'll be voting no on those ordinances. I'm not happy with the process, and I think community input, committee input was really missing here. And I think even in the first and second reading, not having those red lines, and like we talked about going one or two at a time and working through them methodically, I think I would have felt a lot better getting that space to talk about each of them and why these changes are good. So with that missing, I can't support tonight's agenda items.
Okay, I guess I'd like to add to that a little bit, that keep in mind that the ordinances aren't set by the staff. We had a special committee, plus we had a special meeting that 4 of us attended, that we went through these. And as far as the community, they really don't care, I don't think, what changes we've made. I would, as a resident, I would just as soon know what the current ordinance is. So I guess I'm looking at it differently than you are as far as the red line version. So, and that's your choice if you want to vote no.
Okay, thank you.
And I will just say, if people have an issue with the process, that we're going through, this is something that would be good to bring up when we're like in that process. Because we started this well over a year ago, looking at these ordinances. So if community involvement and, outreach was really important, that's something that a year ago or so we could have maybe addressed a little bit more than we can at this point.
The agreement we had a year ago was, what I assumed we were doing and what I heard we were doing was minor changes, things that are discrepancies, things that are inconsistent in the ordinances. And I see a lot more revisions than that. So that's where it went further than I anticipated.
Okay. Bill, do you have anything for roundtable?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Mike, do you have anything for roundtable?
I do not.
Peter?
I do. I wanted to bring back up after having my airport advisory meeting, our ordinance to allow for public hunt on our public lands or animal control. And I'd like to add it to the agenda again, but go through the normal first and second reading so we have time for community input. But there was a lot of feedback from the people that use the airport that it is a major issue for them, and they feel like something has to be done to allow for some control out there, because it becomes a bit of a safety issue of a plane landing into a deer or taking off into a deer. So I was looking to add back on the ordinance we looked at last week as an emergency ordinance, but not as an emergency, just put it through the normal process.
I think we're going to add that tonight, right? Okay.
Yeah, so your process, just to clear for council, is during the regular meeting, you'd have to, under approval of agenda 4A, you'd have to amend the agenda to add an item under 7, so it'd be 7B. First reading and scheduling of a second reading and public hearing for the October 23rd, 2023 council meeting for ordinance 514 is what it would be. And we have them printed off for you across the hallway. We weren't quite sure how this was going to go during the study session, so we didn't bring them over here.
And the only second item I had was, I would like to at some point look back at our commercial sign ordinance. I know we allow for murals downtown, but I would love if we also could allow for some of the commercial signage that we've had in the past. And if we want to do something specifically for the downtown core to allow for that, for a certain percentage of the building that they can put on a mural that technically would be considered commercial. But, it's something like we see, like the Montgomery Ward sign, we see a lot of the old signs that are still there for old businesses. And I'd like to let the businesses be able to use their sides of their building in that similar process.
Yeah, so the sign ordinance or your sign regulations is governed by the zoning ordinance now. So you'd make a recommendation to the planning commission to look at that ordinance and address it that way.
But I kind of wanted to see how the rest of council felt on that,
Sure.
if that's something like we'd want to look at, or if that's something that you think would be appropriate to allow for some of those murals to be commercial and not just artistic.
Peter, I would support that, going to planning commission. That's something that, as these signs, you see them on the sides of the buildings, I would love to see those rejuvenated or, for the new businesses kind of brought to life. So I would absolutely support that.
Me too, yeah.
Peter, the ordinance that you wanted to change for the hunting out to the airport, that doesn't mean we're going to do it. That just makes it so that we can do it, correct?
Yeah, that ordinance only authorized the city council to authorize a hunt.
Okay.
And then
I wanted to make that
whenever we
sure
do
for
that,
the
of
rest
course,
of
as a council, I would feel like we should definitely review it and make sure we understand.
That was my
If it's
understanding, but I don't think some of the council just thought it was, okay, we're gonna hunt, we don't want that. I think that's part of the problem that they had issue with it.
Well, I think if we pass that, there's going to be a hunt.
There could be,
Not necessarily.
it could get voted down.
Well, I mean, if we pass it, there's gonna be a hunt.
No, we have to then pass a resolution to allow a hunt. So it's two separate matters. One allows it, which would also allow it for places such as our public works or out at the water facility if they had an issue with pest. Technically, if they have an issue right now with pest, the only thing they can do is poisoning. And the same out at our sewer treatment, any place that's public land that's owned by the city, that there is no ability to do anything with like a bow and arrow as pest control. But it would allow us as a council to look at it. And if we feel like we're not gonna wanna do it, we can say yes or no, or if we want the more input because we want more of a study of like, what is our other options, we can always say to staff, we don't wanna authorize it right now, but go look at it and get the DNR out here and see what they recommend. But it just gives us that tool in our toolbox. So I'm not saying, oh, we have to do it. I'm just saying the people at the airport have been saying there's been an issue there for years. They would like something done on it, considering putting a fence around the airport is not in our schedule for another couple of years, and even
That
then,
was
it's
my
only
next question.
partial. It's in our CIP, but I could see it coming back from bid and not being anywhere close to what we have in our CIP, because fencing is not cheap, especially when you're doing like 10 to 12-foot fence. So that's why I wanted to bring it back, was I think we should have the ability, but we would still decide as a council if we want to do it or not. And of course, the public could come in and say yes or no as well, and the comment on it.
To me, it's a safety situation too, Roger. I mean, an airplane coming through there with passengers in it gets hit in a deer, they're gonna be not in good shape.
Yeah, I understand that. I know that typically now they come and buzz the field one time through and scare everything off, and then they come in and make their landing, so that hasn't been an issue so far,
So
thankfully.
far,
That's only if they're also familiar with the airport. If they're coming in from a different area, they're not necessarily familiar that there's a deer problem, they may or may not do that. Everybody that flies out of there knows to do it, but, and I don't know if we can put any notams to tell people, hey, be careful, there's deer.
Roger, did you have anything for roundtable?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple things. I just received a call on the way in from Scott Beltman, our county commissioner in our area. He wanted to remind everyone that this coming Thursday is the first reading of the county budget. So if anybody has anything they'd like to look at or hear what's going on at the county, he'd invite everyone to come out. The other thing he mentioned is it sounds like that the animal shelter is no longer going to be funded by the county. If they're going to fund it, it sounds like they may take it over. It now is done by Wishbone, run by Wishbone, and the county is not going to fund it anymore, it sounds like. And the other thing that I would like to remind council of is that they're at public comment time. There is no interaction with the public. Rather, it is a presentation or just someone making a comment. We are not allowed to or we do not make comments back or ask them questions. Okay? Does anybody have anything else or any questions about that?
Would it be our decision?
What do you mean?
If I was asked a question and I could answer it?
No. We just don't interact with public comments at all.
Seems kind of,
It's just always, the way I understand it, it's always been a
It's-
rule.
Yeah,
Like if you look at.
it
if
is
you-
awkward.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
it is awkward, but from how I understand what public comment is for, is only for the public to
Comment.
comment, or, to raise an issue, or, ask questions, and then council can discuss amongst ourselves afterwards. But it's not supposed to be a dialogue, how I understand the time to be, because then it can get way out of hand.
Correct.
But yeah, I agree, there are times when
It is.
there's questions
it
where
is.
you're like, seems like we could just answer this, but we're not supposed to do that.
So how do we facilitate that discussion? Like somebody comes and gives a comment, we don't have a back and forth, but then council, would have like a period to discuss, or?
I would say that would be something to bring up at council comments, if there was anything you wanted to direct staff to do.
At the end.
Yeah, previously, I mean, I used to send out cards after somebody gave public comment and just thank them, or try to get an answer and answer that after the meeting. Or you can reach out to staff and they can answer this question for you. So I had done that in the past.
And just for a little more clarification, in your rules of procedure, which is adopted in 2020, under Section 3, Public Participation, it talks about public comment is a time, so this is Public Participation, Section 3, and this is C3. Public comment time is to hear from the public. Therefore, responses usually will not occur. The mayor may decide a response is appropriate and may, in the mayor's discretion, respond on behalf of council, allow a council member to respond, or direct city staff or others who are present to respond. That's what it says in your rules of procedure, rules of procedure.
Typically, during most public comment I've seen is technically they're addressing the head of the body, which would be the mayor. And then the mayor can address back if she has something to either direct staff, or if she wants input from the rest of the council, I guess she can also do that at that time, because she's the one running the meeting. So for rules of order and rules of decorum, usually that's how it goes.
And there's an option also to make a statement prior to public comment, if, just going back to the veteran memorial issue, knowing that there was going to be individuals here making comment, you can kind of preempt that by explaining the situation as the mayor.
Thank you all for chiming in on that. Is there anything else for roundtable? Okay. If not, we'll move on down to the presentation on PACER ratings of roads in the city of Allegan. Looks like my culprits are headed this way,
Getting
Doug and
double-teamed.
Tony.
Okay, thanks. Earlier this year, Tony and I gave a presentation on PACER ratings and how we incorporate those into RoadSoft software. And the RoadSoft allows us to do different reports, if you will, as far as predicting how many dollars we'll need to get so many roads into good condition, or whatever condition we want to be, over a certain timeline. So we made the presentation, we were asked to come up with some different scenarios, and I believe that we addressed the vast majority of them. So just a little history, the PACER is pavement surface evaluation rating system of rating roads distresses on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being poor or failed, and 10 being a brand-new road. So when Tony and I drive around next spring, we do drive the downtown district, those new roads will be in a 10 rating for 1 year. Then after 1 year, they drop down. The PACER system also provides guidelines for appropriate treatments. From 8, 9, and 10 in a good category, generally there's very little treatments. 5, 6, and 7 is a little more preventive maintenance, and 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the poor categories. We get into major rehab or reconstruction. This just shows a little graph, if you will, as the pavement ages. The rating goes from a 10 on down to a 1 or 2, or even a failed at 0, if you will. If you do treatments in between there, like we've done some crack seal, what that would do is jump that rating from like a 4 or 5 back up to an 8, just to extend that curve off to the right a little bit. But eventually you get to a point where we have to do some major rehab in the city. This is nothing more than a cheat sheet that we take out in the spring when we rate the streets. It shows the good roads, and it gives a description of them and what to look for, and then a potential preventive maintenance. The fair 7, 6, and 5, it starts. You start seeing cracking, and it gives different types of preventive maintenance to do in there. And then the 4, 3, 2, and 1, it gives some suggestions to do surface treatment in those categories. These are just some photos, if you will, to help visualize what a 10, 9, and 8 might look like. 10, we shouldn't see any cracks. 9 and 8, we start seeing the longitudinal cracks in the wheel paths mainly. Then you can address those with minor patching or a crack seal like we've done in the past on streets. 7, 6, and 5, we start seeing more transverse cracks and a little closer together. And you see some patching in there as well where potholes have formed over the past year or two. And preventive maintenance, and there would be crack seal, patching, or a surface treatment like chip seal or a slurry seal or microsurface or another acceptable surface. Thank you. 4, 3, 2, and 1. You can see on the right wheel path and either one of those lanes where the distress is kind of indicating that it's a base failure, where at this point in time you're into a mill and fill or a crush and shape or a total reconstruct. So that's where the money starts getting more per lane mile, if you will. It just depends on the type of surface treatment that you do, mill and fill, crush and shape, or a total reconstruction. And after Tony and I went out earlier this year and did our ratings, we entered those into RoadSoft. And this, I know this here one includes the MDOT highways,
Correct.
and it should.
They're not in your ratio, but they're just in there for the ratings.
Okay,
Because they're not MDOT roads, they won't feed into your analysis, but they're just on there for the rating of them.
okay, thank you. And now I turn it over to Tony.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Once we get done with the PACER ratings, we import that or export that into RoadSoft, and we do the different analyses.
Thank you, Doug. So if you think about the analyses, it's the same thing that was really invented during wartime for triaging people who were hurt or harmed in duty. So you kind of have, people coming to the medical things, we're putting in 3 suites. One where not much is needed, so you don't have to give them a lot of care because they're pretty healthy yet. They don't need them. And that's that 8, 9, 10 that Doug was just talking about. The middle ones are the people who are hurt or roads that are damaged, but a little bit of effort will go a long way to making them good again. The third tier, and that's those 1, 2s, and 3s, those are the ones that are unfortunately so damaged that the attention and need and cost to fix those is at the harm of everything else. So really RoadSoft kind of incorporates that same kind of mentality. It's putting the right resources in the right place to get the maximum benefit for the community. So that's kind of an analogy of how that RoadSoft system works. As Doug said, it's an asset management system that isn't active it's live. So we can go in there tomorrow and change one of the roads, and we can rerun all these reports again. It's really built on a GIS system. So when we're out there on the roads, we literally have a laptop in my lap, and Doug's driving, and wherever we're at, we rate it, and it goes right up into the system at that point. We have a data collector in the computer as we're going. It was started in 1992 by Michigan Tech, and it was really kind of a way to bring consistency and a system that communities can rely on for the asset management of the roadway systems. Right now, there are over 400 agencies in the state of Michigan that use this, between firms, municipalities, the state, county road agencies. We have that to just underscore that this is the generally accepted system that everybody uses in the state of Michigan to decide what is needed in terms of investment within the roadway systems. So for this year, for this round, so as we said, we met last, I want to say in January. After that, Doug and I went out and redid all the roads like we do every spring. That is something, just so you know, we do this every year as a pro bono thing for the communities because of our relationship through the engineer of record, and do this analysis every year at no cost. As Doug said, when we did the ratings, we put everything downtown as a 9 because we didn't want to have them in their current condition, them being all ripped up, because it would skew the numbers. So we set them assuming they were back in really good shape, nothing was going to be needed by the time we do this again next year. So the first thing we looked at is what would the investment be needed to have 25% of the roads within the community rated good in the next 10 years, what you'd have to do. And this next chart will kind of illustrate that a little bit. So over the next 10 years, if you were to spend $140,000 per year on your road system in terms of preventive maintenance, rehab work, at the end of 10 years, 25% of your roads would be in good shape. That means 75% of your roads would not be in good shape, and that decline would mean pretty significant expenses after that to rehab roads. Because if we just do this much, by the time we get to year 10, we're really into either most of the roads left milling and filling, totally reconstruction, or crushing and shaping. And that's where you get a lot more expensive than some of these earlier treatments we're talking about. So if we were to spend $140,000 a year, and I don't want to put you guys, but you guys have spent historically, not counting these last few years, do you off the top of your head, no idea? Okay. I know that was a number that exceeded not that long ago. You know, before Doug was here, there was about 80 to 100,000 a year kind of going towards, if I remember right, road system, just to give you a benchmark of where it was probably 7 years ago, 6 years ago. All right, for 50%, if you want to get 50% of your roads in the community to that, you're looking at about $299,000, call it $300,000 a year. The community would have to spend on its road system to get half the roads to good condition in 10 years. Again, like that, like we talked about before, then we're going to start getting into the rehabs. We're going to have to do mill and fills, crush and shapes, and reconstructions after that 10 years. Because we've taken off that kind of, I use that analogy of combat hospitals, those 2s and 1s kind of patients, those will be off the table at that point. We'll be left with really what is the high dollar, expensive, resource intensive things to address. Going to what we look at it to get 75% of the community's roads in good shape within 10 years, that number jumps to $669,000. The reason for that jump is that's the gap between where we're getting, I'm going to call it the low-hanging fruit that we can get in those things that we're having to get into rehabs and reconstructions. That's why you're seeing that jump up in dollar spending right now, because to get to 75%, we're going to get all the low-hanging fruit off the table and start getting into those more critical patients, for lack of a better analogy, those things that are just failing. If you think of both sides of Rossman Park, the road system up through there, loaded with alligator cracking, like you see, that's those segmental block cracks like this that you see just looks like an alligator back. That means the base has totally failed underneath the road. That means you can't go in there and just do an overlay of that. You really have to get into the base to reconstruct. And that is why some of the things like crack sealing and those overlays are so important early on is, and you guys know this, water is the enemy of roads, especially in Michigan. We get those openings, the bigger the crack gets, the more water gets in there, we get the freeze and thaw. That's what's happening in that base. So every time that happens every year, that base is just working and softening. So when you see the roads start to fail, really to this point of that alligator blocking, that's actually not the road failing, that's the base failing. And that energy from the vehicles drives down, bounces right back off that base into the asphalt and starts to crack it up. So this is why those roads are left now. We're having to get more into that base, more of that rehab work, that reconstruct work, because what's under that asphalt has failed. So that's why you're seeing that big jump up in annual spending to get from 50% to 75%, because we're getting to those roads that pretty much are starting to fail or have failed. The last one you guys asked to look like is what it went to 85%. What does that look like? And again, you see another pretty huge base jump in that. So we go from that number to almost $900,000 a year, right around $900,000 a year. That would have to be spent every year to get 85% of your roads to being in good shape in 10 years. And again, that still leaves that last 15% really are the worst of the worst roads that we're saving to the very last, just because the cost to do those takes money away from other roads that we can put less money in and get a better result. So what a lot of communities, in this conversation we're having here tonight, we're having this in just about every community we have. I like to use this analogy. I'm looking at the age, okay, we're all safe age-wise on here. Most of the infrastructure in this country got built by our grandparents' generation. You know, the greatest generation that came home after World War II, we saw the huge influx in public infrastructure. Then it got kind of handed over to our parents, who didn't put a lot of money into the infrastructure and asset management we're talking about. So now your generation is the one sitting here looking at this, going, all right, how do we pay for years and years and years of disinvestment? It's no fault to anybody in this room right now, and it's no fault to this community. Every city in this country is dealing with this on various levels right now, particularly the older cities in the north and the northeast like we are. Like I like to say, if anybody likes seeing me come in the room, they wouldn't roll their eyes every time we come in and tell them what you need to spend on a project. Infrastructure is just one of those things that people don't love to spend money on until it breaks. And what we're trying to get away from is, let's not wait till it breaks before we spend money on it, because it costs more money to do that. Let's make the right investments along the way so the community is spending less money over time for a better result. And that kind of feeds into what we call the asset management, kind of what you see here, process and plan. What that does is, the idea is get an idea of your assets. And we of our assets, we have a pretty good idea what the assets conditions are in the community right now, water, sewer, roads, all that stuff from the last few years with the studies and everything else that's been going on. You know your finances. You guys have a great staff on the financial side. They know the numbers, they know what they have coming in, they know what to expect. Really good handle there. We know the life cycle of these roads. We know the life cycle of water and sewer. I mean, been doing it long enough, everybody kind of knows that. Decision-making, the rule-making, that's kind of where we're at right now, is what is the decision of how we're going to care for those assets? And there's no right or wrong answer. Every community has different values and different abilities to pay. It's how do we maximize that ability to pay and leverage things to do as much as we can. And that's where the sustainability comes in. We should be making investments right now, not looking at this year, but the next 10 and 20 years. So the idea is we take all those different data points and approaches into one thing and create a plan that you guys can follow year in and year out. That doesn't be like, oh, we got a little money this year, let's go try to do this. We got a little money this year. This looks at it and goes, okay, this year we need to be doing these roads. 2 years from now are these roads. And it doesn't mean that's written in concrete. But if you're gonna put another road in, you need to decide what road you're picking out. So it forces you to have kind of a strategy, structure, and process around your community's infrastructure. Next slide, please. So the importance of our assets and the roads. I'm gonna hit on this and talk about the value of the system. Your roads are probably one of your biggest community assets outside of water and sewer. Those three things probably represent the three most valuable assets this community owns. Problem is that, road infrastructure is often not seen as a financial asset. It's looked at something we drive on. We don't think about the financial value of that black or concrete surface that's on the road there. And really, this is the point I'd like to say. It's the consequence of not fully valuing these assets is the same as increasing our debt. It's the same as taking a credit card and putting money on it that you don't know if you repay or not, because you are taking an asset and not investing it and just kind of flounder out there. So where we're at is establish a complete inventory of the road network, conditions, all the stuff we just talked about. We've got that. We've got the value of the asset. We know the future demand cycles. We know the maintenance needs. And let me tell you this right now. I work in a lot of, and I'm not saying because he's sitting right here, I work in a lot of different public works departments around the state. Doug Katzbaum's one of the best public works directors out there. You guys are truly fortunate. He knows his business is about as well, probably better than every public works director I work with. So you guys never have to worry about, does your public works department have the knowledge and experience to do what's right? It's a resource thing. You guys have an incredible amount of knowledge in that department that you guys should be really, really appreciative of. And again, I would say that if he wasn't standing right there. But this is what comes into the value. What is the desired quality and performance of your road network? As a council, what do you want that to be? What is reflective of the values of the community? And then once we know that, we can set up different funding scenarios to say, okay, to establish what you guys want to do, and you saw a little bit of that here tonight with those different scenarios, to establish a little bit of that, okay, here's what you need to spend per year. That's really what this process is about. To give you a little bit, you made that slide look so much better than I did. Thank you, whoever did that. Sorry, same numbers, just as easy to read now. Right now, the value, we went through, and if you take all the different type of lane miles you have between, whether it's curb and gutter, the thickness, concrete, asphalt, all that, the value of your road system in this community right now, and these are numbers of the spring, I did not update them for this, but of the spring of this year, it's almost $45 million. I mean, you think about that, that's a pretty significant amount of money that sits out in your streets in the form of asphalt, sand, and aggregate, $45 million sitting out there. So when you think about the numbers we're talking and the needed investment, it's not a lot we're talking about when you consider that's what you have as an asset sitting out, and I'm gonna use a bad pun here, on the streets. Last slide, it's just some relative percentages on that. So if we take that $140,000 a year to get to 25% roads, good roads in 10 years, that represents 3.3% of that asset. So we're talking by most asset management standards, less than you would really want to invest to maintain your asset. To get to that 50% good roads in 10 years, which is not a bad goal to have right now, I'll be honest with you, that's 0.7% of the value of that asset you'd be investing every year. To get to that 75%, that's a pretty lofty goal. I'm not, most communities try to get to 65, 75%. That's really good with available funding. That's about 1.5% of the value of that asset you'd be investing every year. Get to 85% good road level in 10 years, that $900,000 number, you're talking about a 2% annual investment back into that asset to preserve that asset for future generations. So this is kind of a play on the next steps we talked about when we've talked about this before. Nobody's got all the answers to this. We know the numbers, we know the condition of the roads, but how do we get it to where you guys want to be is the next question. And it's also informing the community. I mean, that's pretty critical to have this as a broader community conversation. Totally up to you guys what you want to do, but the potential does exist to kind of hold a community meeting and inform residents about your street network. I mean, we can spend time going in depth about it and solicit input. What's the community want to see? What's their values? What do they want their road system to be? And we can do some things like, all right, if you were to bond for this number, you would have to say per $100,000 a house value looks like this. And we can run all those scenarios for you if you'd want. Based on that, the council could establish a list of priority projects, using the road soft stuff and that community input in the spring of this next year. The important thing that's part of this conversation, though, is also where do we have failing utilities? We don't want to redo a road if we're going to be doing the water main 2 years later. We don't want to be doing a road if we're doing the sewer 5 years later. The city has a great handle on the condition of their water and sewer system. So we can take those needs and overlap them with the roads needs and then really come up, here's really the next 3-4 big projects. Or, all right, before we mill and fill this road, let's open the one lane to redo the water line and then mill and fill over the whole thing. We don't have to rip the whole road up at that point. But the last thing we want to do is put that money into those roads and then rip them back up 2-3 years later. And then finally, if you want to, we could come back with a plan, working with the council and the staff and the community sometime midsummer to kind of figure out what you want to do moving forward. Or you can just roll with the dice and do what you're doing now. There's no, again, right or wrong answer. It's what's that value of the community and what do you guys want to do? I just went through a lot of stuff and talked about a lot of money there. Do you guys have any questions for us this evening?
How much money do we have available for this program?
That would be, Joel, do you want to speak to that so I'm not spending money on your behalf?
Yeah, you're not spending money on our behalf. Thank you. So Dave, this evening, what we want to do is identify what our current condition is, and that's what you got this evening. It was a similar presentation, I think it was done earlier this year.
January.
When a couple of council members said, man, what if we only needed to do 25% good? And we said, okay, we're going to reevaluate the roads this summer anyways, and we'll come back to you. So over the next month or so, as we're wrapping up the downtown the downtown infrastructure project, we'll have a better handle of moving forward. We have, other grants that are out there that have not been announced yet. The TEDFs are going to be announced, this
Day.
November-ish.
Yeah.
October, November is when those are announced, and we'll have a better handle on where we stand with those. I guess a question we have for council is, as you go through those and you saw the colors on the maps, and I'll go ahead and I'll email that slide to you because I realized it wasn't in the packet showing the different ratings of the different streets. So I can get that to you in the packet, or get that to you in a separate email. The gut question really is, are we looking at, 50%? I mean, we're just a little north of 100,000 a year right now.
Okay.
So if my memory serves me correctly on what we have for major and local streets, not including the grant money. So yeah, we're gonna have to, there's priorities that are gonna have to be, discussed in the upcoming budget for next year. And what level of commitment. I mean, we all drive down streets. We all know how our own commutes or the neighborhoods we drive through. Yeah, how we feel on those. Yeah, Mayor.
So in the budget, Joel, did I just understand we have like 100,000 roughly? Is that what you're saying, that we
Yeah.
put away for streets roughly?
Typically, we put like that amount away total.
Okay,
And so, there's gonna be some discussions on,
okay.
which direction we wanna go.
So
Okay.
I was just looking at the 2024 proposed budget and looking at the major and local street funds and their revenues. We're going to have to get something to kind of evaluate that, because when I look at those minus any grants, the major gets 673,000 a year in revenue and the local gets 317,000 in revenue.
Come up with
And we may have to look at how are we best using those funds, and are we gonna have to do cuts elsewhere to move that 100,000 to 300,000 before I consider taking out loans. We may have to tighten a belt notch or two to see, because I don't wanna get us into trouble with a bunch of loans, because we've done really well trying to get ourselves out of that type of trouble. But I would want something from maybe Tracy to look at that, to go, okay, if we were to do this, this is what a budget would look like without any grants, and this, what we could do with, and we're gonna have to really evaluate that, I think, when it comes time for next budget.
So I asked Doug to just come up to the podium so he can correct me. So, Peter, when you're looking at the Major Streets Fund, 202, and you're looking at that total revenue, Major Streets, our gas and weight tax.
Gas and weight tax, the snow, the
Exactly,
trunk
and
line.
you
Some of
ta-
that I know is dedicated to things like snow. and
Correct,
the like.
I just want to be clear.
That's it.
When
That's-
Peter's saying that doesn't go right into the asphalt on the street.
Yeah.
That goes
That's what
into
I'm saying.
staff,
There's staff and all
maintenance,
that comes out of
equipment,
that.
all that stuff.
I want to see kind of like, how are we going to optimize that? Can we optimize that at all to try to squeeze out maybe another 50 or maybe another 75,000 to get us to 175,000? We're going to have to look at some of that before I say, let's take out a bunch of more loans.
Correct.
Because we just got to optimize. I'm not saying we're not, but there's always a good chance to look at how can we do this and not take them out. So that might be something that I think council would get more of a presentation from Tracy and Doug to say, this is kind of how the funds are currently appropriated out. This is all our revenues and this is all of our outgoes. And we can look at the budget, that's what I was just looking at, and it shows a lot of that. But some of those funds are probably locked to certain things, like the snow removal and certain things where it's like, we can only use this much of it is even available for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I mentioned a little more than 100, so if you look at the Fund 202 Major Streets, our last audited when we didn't have a big street project going in. So we weren't bonding for something. FY '21, we allocated $114,000 for capital projects. Our road maintenance that year was $1,525. But at that time, we were in the mindset of saving what we can save because we knew we had the downtown project coming up. And so we weren't being aggressive on other projects that were out there.
And as that project comes out of not needing to be saving to do that, we may look at what's gonna be available
Yeah.
in the future, the projected out. Cause I see capital projects going out to FY '26 at 1.4 million in the 202 fund. And FY '25 is 1.2 as well, or 1.2 and then 1.4. So I see we have in the next proposed budgets that is in our current budget. There was some additional, and I don't know if those are for specific projects that we have in mind those years.
They are. They're all part of our capital improvement project.
And those, I
Next year alone is the finishing up of Hubbard Street between Walnut and M89 as part of the MDOT roundabout construction project. Our contribution, the bids will come in the first week of November, and we'll hopefully know by the end of November, but the preliminary numbers have us around $500,000, give or take some change that will contribute, that's in the budget already, established in our 3-year projection. As I mentioned before, we get that small urban grant, $385,000.
385,000.
We get that every 3 years.
Every, I know we get it in 2025.
Yeah, I think it's an every 3-year, allocation is received. That was planned for working on Water Street and State Street. Doug and I are looking at Ely Street, because Ely is a main arterial street going out the southwest side of the city. It's a major collector, if you want to use road terms. And it's rough going up that hill. And for those of you that make your way up Ely, you probably experience it, so.
And I think as a council, I think we have to look at also some of our other fundings, like our marijuana funding, which is $150K a year. If we say to staff, we want that dedicated to the roads, you're gonna have to take cuts elsewhere to take that from our general fund and
Yep.
push it over there. That's something that we're gonna have to decide as a council if that's where we wanna go. And then how it affects everything else in the budget. Like if we take that 150 and just say that's not going in it's going in the general and then transferring out to our road projects.
Yeah, so full circle back to Dave's question, Councilmember Redding, there's not a straight answer we can give you on like how much money we've set aside for this project. Because we're at the point of right now of just, it's our health checkup. Where are we with the condition of our roads? And we know where we are as we've gone through this process, and now we're gonna have to figure out what's it gonna take to get through this. Someone are going to your doctor, and your doctor says, hey, your cholesterol's high, and now it's, okay, how am I gonna get it off, high cholesterol, so.
So this was just information for budget time, really, right?
Correct.
And I heard correctly, those projects that are upcoming were taken out of this projections, correct, Doug?
What that is
Just so I make sure
that's just standard line we always put in there just in case Doug has a crack sealing project that's gonna put 2 roads up we don't know. That takes, it doesn't include the off-approach your projects that Joel was talking about, like Ely or water, those are not in there, correct? It's everything up through the downtown project right now.
so that may be something that I'd want to look at if those are out. I don't know how much that affects it, but probably not that much.
I upped it to 9. I just have a question, Doug. What did you have to pay Tony to give you that compliment?
I don't give them out very often, most people will tell you, so that's how
But
genuine it is.
that's okay.
That
We
happens
think
about
he's
twice a year.
we think he's kind of awesome
Yeah, you
too,
guys
so.
did okay when you got him.
I don't like the idea of shooting from the hip, so the suggestion or the recommendation to maybe have some public meetings to get some public input on this, going back to what you were talking about, Dave, of letting the public have some say in what how we're deciding to say, have them say, where do you think we should prioritize this, I think would be really helpful, allowing us to move forward with some backing from our residents. I like that idea. I think maybe I would be in favor of moving in that direction.
And that's true, except for our budget meetings are always open meetings. So, I guess I feel like we always put our meetings out there for the public, and you see how many public we have every meeting.
Yeah.
So,
The way we envision this is it would be more of an open house drop-in. I mean, it is one of the recommendations in that you saw on the slides. Just kind of engaging the public on how road funding works, how infrastructure funding works, and what our, current, state is right now with our roads here in the city of Allegan. In my opinion, it's, no different than when we have a public open house on the master plan. We had 3 people show up, but, we were still there. Or when we worked with MDOT to share the plans for the roundabout. And how's this gonna work? And we had MDOT, share some, diagrams on, road funding, who's paying for what, so they had a better understanding. So that's why we put it out there. We just figured this would be something that, staff could organize, bring people in, print off the Pacer map, a nice big poster board, so they can, see it, look at what their street is. They can inform us if they think, we might be wrong on some rating. And, take feedback from them on that. So that's our vision for this with a very small presentation.
And also, when I was doing that, I agree. We often don't get very many people to come out. But then if we get pushback later on, we can say, we held a public meeting, did you come to voice your opinion at that point or give your input? So I think
Right,
it's
and
just
I'm
good-
not
good
opposed to that.
practice.
I mean, I've been to a lot of them, and the turnout is sad.
Agreed.
Any more discussion on that from anyone? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I just had a quick question
Oh.
for staff.
Hold on. Oh,
For
For
Joel's
staff,
staff,
okay.
yeah. How do we see this, like, going forward as far as planning? Is this something that, as a council, we would wait to look at budget season? Is this something that we want to actually sit down as a council and look at the PACER rating and kind of have those roads? Like, how do we effectuate an actual plan of how to move forward, I guess?
Sure, so, not wanting to shoot or, speak quickly without putting much thought into it. As I've kicked this around, we're thinking of November before the holidays kind of public meeting. Because the downtown streetscape will be wrapping up by then and we'll know where we stand, in that total, project. By the mid-November, we will know what our commitment is to the Hubbard Street project with the MDOT roundabout. Then we'll probably take one of your holiday meetings in December and make it a special study session and kind of give you a financial snapshot on where we stand with this, what we heard from the public during the meeting, and go, that route. I will share right now, just, throw my cards on the table. I had some conversations with some residents about what would a street millage look like. Not a bond, not a loan, but, a 10-year street millage. That is something a handful of cities our size have pulled off. When the residents know exactly what that extra money's gonna go to and there's a plan. They've been successful and other city managers have encouraged me to look at that. Don't know if that would fly here in Allegan, but that is a conversation, as we talk about funding. Council, Councilmember Hanse talked about, tightening the belt or other cuts. That's also on the board. Several council members have talked about dedicating the marijuana licensing fees that we get into certain pots. That's a bad pun, I apologize. Into certain buckets, roads, police, parks, pick your bucket that the city does. That's something to discuss. And then one thing I will always remind council is we have many, many needs and limited resources. So there is a prioritization process that we have to do as a community. And, council, you do that through your budget, approval process, and then through your annual actions. So that's how I see this playing out. And we'll probably come to you with like an actual schedule, probably, at your first meeting in November, if not your last one in October. Because this is something we really want to make sure we just don't talk about once every 2 years and say, yeah, we got to do something, but we don't ever, develop a plan of action.
I think a millage conversation after a public hearing with maps showing the rating of the streets would probably go over a little bit better than just, hey, let's vote on a street millage. So absolutely having some sort of meeting with those maps, with all the ratings.
You'll get people to attend if you say it's for a millage.
Yeah, they will come. I mean, that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
council's considering this and.
And I mean, that's a council discussion and decision on the, and I just wanted to be full transparent on conversations I've had. Because we've been talking about this now for a year and a half. I mean, Doug constantly reminds me there's 29 or 28 so miles of road that he's responsible for, not just the ones that are identified that we're doing this year. So it is that, on their brain often.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the discussion regarding city proclamations. Michaela, you going to take this?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we just wanted council to have a quick discussion about proclamations because currently the city charter and the rules of procedure for council do not address proclamations at all and don't give much direction I guess, as far as what type of proclamations council would like to see. We're approached by a handful of different organizations or individuals throughout the year asking that council, specifically the mayor, would read a proclamation at a regular meeting. And staff would just feel more comfortable, I guess, if we had some sort of guideline to follow as far as what types of proclamations, what types of, causes or awareness or whatever that council would like to actually see put forward. We don't want to put something on the agenda if it's not something that council would support.
So thank you, Michaela. Just a little bit of background information. I don't think we've had any controversial proclamations or resolutions. With that said, there are cities that just say, hey, we're not going to do that unless it comes from the DS, unless it comes from the council. If you're involved with county government, they're always passing resolutions that have been sent to them from other counties. There is a practice amongst cities to say, we're not going to, direct the state to do something just because, the city of, USAville wants it done, because that's not coming from us. And we don't want to be in a position as staff forwarding a proclamation here and have 4 council members say, oh, wait a second, I don't agree with what we're about to say, because that would be uncomfortable for staff. So historically, we just always put them on the agenda and said, yeah, do it. And, as things evolve in the world of ours, we're just hitting the pause button, and we want to engage council and just ask you how you would like us to proceed. If you want us to continue to just put it on the agenda and just do it, we'll do that, but we just want to make sure we're not, stepping on someone's toe, the majority of council's toes going that route.
I wouldn't be opposed if maybe it came through in the packet for study session maybe, and we could discuss it then
See if there's consensus.
and see if everyone's okay with it. I mean, we don't vote, we could just do,
So like the study session,
If you have somebody approach with a proclamation, normally I would say it'd come from the DS, so I prefer it that way, that we at least discuss them before they just get proclaimed as us as all as one voice agreeing to it.
yeah, so my question was the study session, the meeting before. So if someone wants to come on the first meeting, they have to come, the meeting that, the previous meeting, not the night of.
Preferably.
that's what I would say, yeah.
So if someone wants to present on the second Monday, second meeting of the month, it's the first meeting of the month when it comes in a study session. Okay,
That's what I would suggest maybe, and then
I just want to make sure I
everybody
understood what
can,
you meant.
everybody can look at it and give their consensus or not. Then would it be a majority vote or majority say so if somebody strictly was against it? How does that work?
I think it just goes with a simple majority vote,
Is it?
I would say, because the proclamation still coming from the council as a whole, but the council as a whole is a majority vote. And I don't think it's a special matter that needs a special supermajority. I don't. I'd just like to see them in advance, and we can discuss them and say if we agree or don't agree, and say this is something we want to put our support behind.
Fine with that.
So my recommendation, the way this could play out very easily is, someone wants, September declared, National Happy Month. We present it at the first meeting in September. If someone's against doing that, and if there's 2 people that are against doing it, they can have that added to the agenda that night to put it up for a vote. If no one's against it, then we'll just bring it to the next meeting, the second meeting in September. Does that make sense? Like I said, we haven't had controversial ones before. I think a lot of people during the study session are going to be like, okay, this is good. And you can't vote during study sessions. That's why I was going that route.
Technically, we
there's-
can, but
What?
technically we can.
It's an open meeting. Our rules and procedure says no, I believe.
But yeah, so I would say, yeah, if it's something that somebody objects to, they can always add it to the agenda if they have a second party to voice that same concern, and then it can be voted down or voted up, and after the study session.
I think that's what Joel just said, right?
But
So do we need, do we need two people, to bring it to a vote?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we just had one that was against it, we don't have a vote, but if there's two that said, I'm not, then we can add it to the agenda for that night's meeting, and then we'll have a vote. And then if it passes by a simple majority, then it still goes forward. That's how that works.
That's what they're saying, yep.
All right. I want to understand how we're doing this.
Is this just gonna include things that are coming outside of, like, City Hall, for instance, like Arbor Day and the Water Month? We usually do a proclamation for water. So something that's coming in from the public that they would like
Yeah,
us
something
to
that's coming
do.
outside from
So
City Hall.
Safe Harbor typically comes in for child abuse and domestic violence.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the review of the 2017, 2020, and 2023 Allegan City Dam inspection reports. Doug, you going to take this?
Every 3 years, dam owners can request an inspection by Eagle, which we have done for the last umpteen years that I'm aware of. 2020, it was done right before I got here. 2023, it was just done in August of this year, August 18th, I believe the date was. And a couple quick takeaways on it. The chart that you see, the 2017 and 2020 reports are very identical in language. So that's why there's a comparison in there as far as principal spillway and earthen embankments, for example. Those are verbatim in both reports. That wasn't addressed at all, it wasn't addressed in the same verbiage in the 2020. The Eagle did switch to a different format, so that's the reason for those not addressed items in there. Overall condition assessment of the dam dropped from fair to poor, and that was based on a couple of items that they found. One was the stop logs in the south section of the dam. Those are in bad condition, but right after the inspection, Jeff Morey took it upon himself to get some timber and slide down in between in the channels of the I-beams that are, thank you, Parker. The picture on the left is what Eagle saw when they were there. We have the stop logs that were worn, they were broken, they were letting a lot of water through. The one on the right was repairs that Jeff and the crew made with some lumber. They did drastically reduce the flow. Now, those are in the channels of the I-beam, the vertical I-beams there. So they're between the stop logs and the openness on the east side of that. Probably a temporary fix. We might get 1 year, we might get 2 or 3 years out of it. That's yet to be seen. Another couple takeaways on that report. On page 9, they did indicate that based upon observations during the inspections, there were no indications of any conditions that represent an immediate threat to the dam stability. And it goes on to say in that same paragraph, though neither the powerhouse or the dam pose an immediate threat to the safety of the dam, both pose safety concerns. But what we're doing is we are still doing weekly inspections. I missed last week, so for whatever reason. But we're still doing regular walk-up inspections in a powerhouse and regular inspections on a dam. And as far as monitoring the dam levels, there are 3 or 4 of us, probably more than that we have an app on our phone where we can log into and check the flows for high water, low water levels. We were in a couple times over this past weekend for adjustments. The report also indicates that we should develop an operation and maintenance plan. My predecessor did develop one. I believe he submitted to Eagle, but Eagle says it's not in their file, so we'll get that down to them. The last item that they address is coming up with an emergency action plan. I'm working with Sarah Clark, the emergency coordinator for the county, and we're working to get that updated and submitted to Eagle by the end of this year, which is a requirement. So, and that's basically some highlights of the. Joel, do you have anything to add on it?
Councilmember Zeter, last meeting, you inquired about when was the dam last insured? So that was in the last paragraph of the report. That was August 15th, 2018. The catwalk which is chained off, and the powerhouse. So that's the answer to your question.
Any question? Yeah, Dave?
When are we gonna do these following recommended actions? Some of them have timelines coming up quick here.
What, is that in the report?
Yes,
that-
Yeah, on page 2, Dave?
right.
Yeah, so replace the wooden stop logs in the rightmost spillway within the next 6 months.
That one, I think we got a start on, that was the work that Jeff did, would be the photo on the right.
So-
The other ones we're gonna address, as they suggest, repair the pop-out, which is a pop-out, where a piece of concrete popped out of the wall. We'll look at that and see if we can repair it. We'll just go down and do them as we can.
The other thing we would share real quick, sorry, Mayor, besides the insurance thing, is this report has been shared with the EPA, as well as other people at Eagle that are involved with the Superfund site, not part of the dam inspection program, but the Superfund site. We're going to be scheduling a conference call with representatives from the EPA and with people from Eagle to just talk about next steps as it relates to this report, but then also our process, with, trying to find ways to implement the vision to remove the dam and the powerhouse.
Will we get an update when these actions are completed?
Sure.
Thank you. And do we have funding available for all of them?
Some stuff we can do in-house. I think item 3 on there is, no, item 4 is clear the trees and stuff like that. We can do that in regular maintenance with our equipment and manpower that we have.
Will the engineers come back and verify the actions are completed? Will we get some sort of sign off?
Eagle engineers or consulting engineers that the city hires.
Whoever recommended these actions.
These were recommended by Eagle. We'll keep them abreast of it too, because we have to, for reporting purposes. So they will come back at most a 3-year, or if we ask them to come back.
Well, I heard the fixes we made here were more temporary. It sounds like the stop logs just need to get replaced. This is great, but when do I know that the recommended actions are taken care of and Eagle's satisfied that our dam is no longer in poor condition?
I guess we'll have to get them back out. So,
Is there any more questions for Doug?
I thought I had highlighted it, now I'm looking through, I thought I read somewhere that with the powerhouse, the left bulkhead is concreted, but the right bulkhead is not, and that it said that, if I remember correctly, it said that if the right bulkhead was reinforced with concrete the way the left side was, that would probably shore it up and make sure that there was no
that's in there,
uncontrolled
yes.
spillage. So I just didn't know if that was something we were considering, or if that was cost.
Joel and I have been discussing that, so yes, we are considering it.
Okay. What will we use to determine whether that's something that we do?
It's in here, I saw it. I forget if it's 2017, 2020, but I believe it was a 2023.
Yeah, I thought I had highlighted it so I could jump to it, and I can't find it. So I don't want to hold us up. We can find it.
We'll find it.
And so I'd just like to hear back what the thoughts are on that and how we might,
Okay.
if that's, because I know it's been a concern that we don't want a collapse, and we don't know if that's gonna happen, but we don't wanna take the chance, so if that's something we could do that's not completely cost prohibitive.
There's also a statement in there that it says it's highly unlikely that it'll wash out, but I
Well, I
can't
thought
find
it
that.
said that a roof collapse, it was unlikely would cause the whole thing to give way, but that there was some concern about that right side, so.
Okay.
There were a lot of words in there.
Here it does say concrete bulkhead and inlet to the left section of powerhouse.
Yeah.
So Roger, I think what you're referencing is the 2020 report on page 5. It talks about the abandoned structure. Deteriorated concrete and masonry are present throughout the older left section of the structure. A detailed structural inspection of the powerhouse structures was performed by LFA, which, that was a firm we brought in, the acronym. Thank you, Tony, Lawson Fisher and Associates, in 2017. This report indicates that failure of the left section of the building could happen suddenly. However, since the left section has a newer concrete bulkhead blocking the flow and the eastern gated section is considerably better condition, sudden failure of the dam due to continued deterioration or failure of the western section of the powerhouse building is unlikely. Regular structural inspections should continue until such a time that the powerhouse structure can be repaired, replaced, or removed. So that's where we are calling, in 17, when they updated that, or that 17 in 2020.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, when you go to 2023, the reports are not the same format, which is frustrating for us as staff. In 2022, if they say, Joel, you weigh 250 pounds, lose 20 pounds, and then in 2023, they say, Joel, you weigh kilograms, I'm gonna say, wait a second here. So, that's what we have from the 2021.
Any more discussion on this? Okay. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Next is the review of the council agenda for tonight. We've already been told that we need to amend 7 and add a 7B for ordinance 514. Is there anything else on the agenda that we need to be aware of? Michaela says no. Anything else? Okay, if nothing else, it is 6:48. We will adjourn this meeting and reconvene the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. The first item on the agenda is roll call. Michaela, please.
Sure. Councilmember Zeter,
Present.
Councilmember Hanse,
Present.
Councilmember Andrus,
Here.
Councilmember Redding,
Here.
Councilmember Morgan,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Byrd,
Here.
and Mayor Galloway.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Michaela. Next on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please stand and recite it with me. Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. We do have an amendment.
I'd make a motion to section 7B to add ordinance 514.
I'll support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes. 5A is approval of the study session minutes from the September 25th, 2023 council meeting. Any changes, Michaela? Okay.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 5B, approval of the regular meeting minutes from the September 25th, 2023 council meeting. Anything there?
I make a motion to approve as presented.
I support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the first reading of ordinances and scheduling of public hearings. 7A is the first reading and scheduling of a second reading and public hearing for the October 23, 2023 council meeting for Ordinance 513 to amend Chapter 12, Garbage and Refuge of the City of Allegan Code of Ordinances. Joel, you going to take that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and grab this one. This is one of the chapters that have been reviewed by the City Council Subcommittee on Ordinances, reviewed by staff, and reviewed by our City Attorney, Nick Curcio. During the September 6th meeting, that City Council had a special meeting with Nick Curcio to review these. There was a request from that, from the council members there, that the mention of yard waste be removed from Chapter 12 to allow for more, well, I'm going to use the phrase of leniency for leaf and brush pickup or other times. So the original writing of that ordinance was no bulk items or yard waste can be stored at the curb. And then a couple council members, I believe all four of the council members are there, like, can we just take out yard waste? Because we don't mind people if they push the yard waste up to the curb as part of our, leaf pickup we do throughout the year or special pickups, et cetera. So we strict that from the ordinance. So this is a first reading this evening. You are scheduling it, or you're having the first reading right now, and then it will have a public hearing on October 23rd for your full action. Any questions? All right.
I'll make a motion to schedule the second reading and a public hearing for Ordinance 513 to amend Chapter 12 on October 23rd of '23.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 7B, Ordinance 514.
So tonight is a second reading of Ordinance 513 or 514.
first reading, right?
It's first reading. We had an emergency ordinance that was voted down.
Oh, I apologize. I jumped on the agenda. It's on my screen, Mayor.
Right.
My apologies.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, so this evening during the study session, Councilmember Hanse requested that we add this ordinance to the agenda for council's consideration. This is an ordinance that would allow council to authorize wildlife control hunts on city-owned property. It is a first reading tonight, and then it's scheduled, or if you pass the motion this evening, we'll have the second reading and the public hearing on October 23rd.
Question on this. I see we've got language that doesn't allow the carrying of slingshots, bows, and arrows by people under 16 years of age on public land. Do we have a similar ordinance for guns?
I do not know that off the top of my head.
I think we do, but it's in a different ordinance.
There's some state laws that are involved with that,
Okay.
so I don't think that's necessary to have that on there. Because there are state laws that don't allow minors to carry weapons unless they're with their parents
And then even
going to a hunt.
people above 16, I think, may carry such articles if unloaded in a suitable case or securely wrapped.
Have to be within their reach, if I remember right about the hunting laws.
Okay. I'm fine with the language we've got in here about slingshots, bows and arrows, but I'd like some follow-up on what the rules are on guns. I think that'd be appropriate.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, David, either, but yeah,
Okay.
I'm just going from my recollection of what the gun laws were.
Sure.
Anything else on this?
No, I view it as fairly straightforward because the interesting thing is that the public can do something that the city can't do. Because currently, the public on their own private land can shoot bows and arrows and slingshots, but the city can't because it's all public land, so we had no way of allowing it so that the council could allow it. And I just wanted this to be a tool for if we wanted to allow it, we could direct staff to allow it for certain wildlife control hunts.
Peter, I know this is being kind of driven by Airport Advisory Board discussion. Did they get a chance to look at this ordinance?
They didn't look specifically, but I did bring it up at our last meeting because that was on last Monday.
Okay.
And said if they, I think I might have sent it, I didn't send it, but I said he could find it on our ordinances or on our last meeting agenda if they wanted to read it, but I kind of addressed with them what it was and that it was turned down at the time and that they were still in support of having some sort of wildlife control capability out at the airport because the fake foxes or the fake wolves aren't really doing much. We don't have any, the other way to control them would be with loud noises, like boom guns, but I don't think we want that because that would be a disturbance to the neighborhood, and we've already had a couple complaints about when they do the helicopters, about them coming in across the houses and making the noise, so somebody had mentioned that to me, and I'm like, that's not gonna fly well. We've had a couple neighbor complaints previously, so that's why I went with, said, that brought up previously to Doug and others that the bow would be my preferred if we wanted to do any wildlife control, because it's not a disturbance to any of the neighborhood. And it's got a limited range, and so.
So ultimately, the committee's looking for that bow hunt, and this is the ordinance that'll get them there.
That'll allow council to do that,
Okay.
but it's still ultimately our decision.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion for a second reading to be scheduled at our next meeting, which I believe is the 13th.
I support.
It's not the 13th,
Oh, what is the date on that? I don't have it in front of me.
the 23rd.
The 23rd.
23rd.
I was off by
Yeah,
10 days.
13th is like in 2 days.
So I'll make a motion for a second reading on the 23rd.
I support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
No.
Aye. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is public hearings and adoptions of ordinances. 8A, second reading of public hearing and adoptions for ordinances 511 to amend chapters that are listed of the City of Code of Ordinances.
Okay, second attempt. So ordinance 511 is ordinance that amends several chapters, specifically Chapter 1, General Provisions, Chapter 2, Administration, Chapter 3, Advertising, Chapter 4, Alcoholic Liquors, Chapter 5, Amusements and Entertainments, Chapter 7, Building Regulations, Chapter 7.5, Cable Television, Chapter 8, Cemeteries, Chapter 10, Elections, Chapter 10.5, Emergency Management, Chapter 11, Fire Prevention, Chapter 12, Garbage and Refuse, Chapter 14, Mobile Homes and Trailers, Chapter 15, Noise, Chapter 18, Parks and Recreation, and Chapter 21, Police. This was also reviewed over the past year by the City Council Subcommittee, as well as on September 6th during the special meeting with the city attorney. This has been discussed multiple times at the council level and in your packets for your review and, comments and questions back to staff. Tonight was the second reading as well as a public hearing. So the floor has to be open for comment for items related to this ordinance.
Joel, I have a quick question. You had mentioned Chapter 8 for cemeteries. I don't see that.
Scratch that.
Thank you.
Yep, because at the last one, we
Oh,
mentioned
good
that we're
catch.
sending that back to Public Spaces Commission for their final review on the rules that they established.
That's not actually included on Ordinance 511, but
Correct.
it is up in the report, so.
Yep.
Good catch. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the second reading for public hearing, 713. If anybody has anything regarding this adoption of the ordinances? Nobody has anything. I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:13. And we need a motion, right, to adopt it?
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 511 as is.
I support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is public comment period. Anyone who has any public comment could step up to the podium, please. You state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Well, my name is Ron Jones. Y'all know who I am. Here's your ordinances that you guys gave to me from this lady. I want you guys to be able to read this. This is why I'm handing them to you. Because, and I highlighted this section. One more? Yeah, I want everybody to have them. Because I don't want to say I just gave you guys
Thank
something. This is an ordinance you gave me on June 10th. All right? I highlighted the section that pertains to me. And I got something for you too. That I'm going to find out, did you send that letter to me? Did you send that letter directly to me yourself, mail it out, certified letter? But you want to call me a liar in here about it? Okay, that's what I thought. You got chin nuts now. You don't know what chin nuts are? Ask somebody. I won't tell you, Miss Lee. You got chin nuts on your chin. Guess what's in your mouth? See. Now, Joe, I have 2 questions for you. And they're real simple questions, since you see your ordinances. Can Danielle Bird turn water on in anybody's name without their permission? Joel Dye?
So I'm going to go ahead, since the charter allows the city manager to partake during council meetings, and I'm going to just reiterate that.
That's a yes or no question. Can
Per our
Danielle
council
Bird turn
rules
water on?
and procedures, we do not respond to people during public comment. Also, all comment is limited to 3 minutes.
Well, I just asked you a yes or no question. Okay, you don't respond to black people comments. That's because you responded to everybody that was in here 2 weeks ago that was white. You answered all their questions, but you didn't answer mine right now. So now I know you're a racist. And for you, I'm glad you did answer my question about did you send that letter personally that was certified that you said was sent to me. It was never sent to me. So I take it Daniel Bird might have sent it. But that's all right with your 5 o'clock shadow. Joel, in this other meeting, you said there was a lady in here that wanted to do a story on you, or Allegan. May I have the name of that, please? See, everybody up here is just gonna ignore my questions. Must be the color of my skin. Think I'm gonna just let you guys keep getting away with this? What's really sad about this, he said to bring the police in. Like I'm supposed to be scared of them. I'm not scared of you. You threatened me. You threatened me. Daniel Bird threatened me, and you guys won't even do your job. Identity theft is real, man. It's real.
Mr. Jones, you need to stay behind the podium, please,
What am I doing wrong? I mean, why?
because speakers are not allowed to leave, to come past the podium.
Okay, why you guys answer everybody's question, won't answer mine? See what I'm saying? There you go again. Once again, right? The man that got $90,000 to build a house, granted from the council, and then moved out of it 2 years later. You sold it. You sold it. You guys commingled the land. See, you guys don't understand, right? Everybody has rights. Just because you don't like how I talk to you, don't mean you're better than I am. When evil flourish, when you guys let people do evil stuff and don't correct it, you can't be good. Evil only flourishes when good people do nothing. Now, maybe somebody else up here asks him the same question. Can Danielle Bird turn water on in your name without your permission, Roger? She can't. You know she can't. Everybody up there know I'm telling the truth. Danielle Bird cannot turn nothing on in my name without my permission. And you guys allowed her to get away with it, and you still charge me for what she done.
Ron, your 3 minutes are up, please.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't get answers to none of my questions. You the mayor,
We
you the
do
mayor of this
not,
council.
we do not interact at public comment time, so at this
Okay,
time, I'm
so
asking
if-
you to
if-
please
if-
have a
If another
seat.
white person, if anybody
because
come up
we
here
are
and
done-
ask you a question,
we
you're
are done with
you're
public
you're
comment.
No, you're done with my public comments.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
correct.
Say that.
You are correct, because
Okay.
we still have open public comment,
Okay,
and
we
you
don't-
had your 3 minutes.
Okay, wow.
Yep,
See?
thank you.
Oh, no, you're not welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, but we're gonna see what's gonna happen now.
Does anyone else have any public comment that they would like to make, please? You're fine, just speak your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. Brett Metamar and
M-A-R-Y, Mary.
Mary Metamar. 247 North Street, Allegan. I just had a thought the other day about the bridge behind J.C. Park. And so I know that the bridge has been closed for, almost 2 years now because of liability issues, right? It's not safe. But I'm curious, is there no liability of trying to merge pedestrian traffic with ORV traffic? Do we want the moms pushing their strollers out there while the ORVs are going by? I'm not sure how liability works, so I just wondered. But, right, what do we want?
We want you to open the bridge up.
Yeah, we'd like to be able to walk to J.C. Park or wherever. We'd like to see the other people use the bridge and be able to go where they want to go. I was just curious because, I don't know, I think you're doing more harm to the bridge actually by having it closed down, right? You're worried about the structural integrity, the pillars sinking, and yet it's closed off, so there's no snow removal in the winter, right? So all that weight just sits there, and I don't know. I don't see how we're making it better. I assume that there's a plan to fix it at some point, right? At some point, they're gonna fix the bridge so we can go across. but in the meantime, I'm not sure, it feels like we're just letting it sit there and get worse instead of, taking care of it. Because it's closed off, no one can get on to remove snow. But that's all, just a thought.
Thank
Hopefully that
you.
was my 3 minutes.
Thank
Too
you.
much time. Thank you.
Is there any more public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on down to the next item on the agenda, reports from boards and commissions and city offices. 11A, city boards, commissions, and area agencies. 11A1 is the Historic District Commission October meeting. Mike, you gonna take this?
Yeah, we had a good meeting and some discussion about how to move forward. The chair would really appreciate direction from council. His concern is that we're gonna send something to council and you'll say no. So we need some direction as far as where to head, what you're good with, what you aren't good with. Is that about it, Joel?
Yeah, so I would, just add a little bit more to what Councilmember Zeter mentioned there. Well, there was one review and approval for windows, and then they got right into their next steps. And my paraphrasing of the conversation was more, they still kind of feel like a rudderless boat. And part of that is they're not quite sure they're not clear where council stands. It's been, there's been 2 votes at the council level. Both have been 3-3 votes to repeal the ordinance. I would say there's some frustration at the HDC level. We did go around, and I think it was in the minutes, ask them, why do they sit on the HDC? And, 3 of them were, they just want to make sure there's consistent and equitable enforcement of the HDC ordinance. And then a comment was made, what if there's no HDC? And they go, well, that's consistent and equitable then. Everybody's playing by the same rules. One person, really wants to make sure we just preserve our ornate structures. And not, so much of the more simple designs. Another person was, Yep, those are the 2 categories that people fell into. And then they want to invite Alan Higgins from the State Historic Preservation Office back out yet again to meet with them and talk. And I reached out to him, and he's checking his calendar, but he wants to know exactly what the main purpose of the meeting would be. What are we going to accomplish with this? Like I said, it's just kind of a rudderless ship right now. The specific question, Mike, you might recall is, would council support enforcement? So someone who does work without a COA, and the work they do is inappropriate for a historic district home, would council be willing to spend the money to correct that and put a lien on that property? Most of them feel council would not be willing to do that work. So I don't know if another joint meeting between council and the HDC is warranted.
So on the enforcement, are they not willing to send the notice, and then if they don't come and get a COA post, to just bring them to district court? Because that was the current process before.
Yep. They want to make sure if they take it to district court, that council would be willing to enforce that order from the court. So if the court says you must correct it, and if you don't correct it, then the local government has the right to go on your property and correct it. would council be willing to authorize that action?
Mike, at one time, Jason was gonna come and present to council during a study session. Is that something that he's mentioned at all, or that he's still interested in doing? Is that something we could invite him to come do? Or like Joel said, a joint meeting?
Yeah, that wasn't talked about specifically. I'm not sure. A joint meeting would probably be good.
I'm sorry, is that something, staff, you'd like to set up a joint meeting?
Yeah, if
Organize it?
council would like to meet with the HDC again, we can notice the meeting appropriately do it during a study session. I mean, there's ways for us to make that happen.
I feel like we got a lot
I
of
think-
loose ends with HDC.
I think so too, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so if you'd like to do that for us, please. Thank you, Mike. Next on the agenda is 11A2, the Airport Advisory Board October meeting. Peter, please.
Yeah, so last Monday we met, we went over our minutes, we approved them. Some of the old business that we talked about was our ALP plan, the airport layout plan, with us abandoning the grass runway, and the update to MDOT and a couple of the changes that were done where the AWAS, which is if we get a weather station where it would be placed, they're moving it on the recommendations of MDOT and our engineer. We discussed the deer calling at length about the issues that many of them have seen out at the airport and the deers cutting across the runway. Hangar leases were all leased out except for one where somebody passed away. And we had 4 board openings coming up. 2 of the members want to be reappointed, 2 of them don't, so we're gonna have 2 openings. So if anybody's interested on joining the Airport Advisory Board, you can fill out your application and we'd be happy to have you join. Then just a little bit of discussion, that we're an advisory board for the council to, somebody had asked what's our role? And then that, also the discussion on Hangar 9, if you guys saw that they had their announcement of opening up in the red hangar, the charter business, I did go to their open house. I did attend that, just to kind of see what it was all about. And when I was there, the owners talked to me a little bit, and I brought up a couple of the issues that they were having at the airport at the meeting, and a couple of them that were just mostly for Doug to probably address, like water in the hangar. Said, well, you gotta talk to your landlord, talk to the city. But my concern was it's the fire suppression system is the water that's off. So I was like, that should probably be on. So Doug was gonna follow up with that, so. And that was our meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Next on the agenda is 11B, the Finance Department. 11B1, request to approve accounts payable and payroll. Roger, please.
We have accounts payable in the amount of $1,210,707.68 and payroll in the amount of $112,125.54 for a total disbursement of $1,322,833.22. I make a motion to approve.
I'll support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11D, Water Utilities. 11D1, request to authorize a purchase order for Plumbers Environmental to perform potholing services for the distribution system materials inventory project in the amount of $105,788. Doug?
I found this
I
on the
mean,
web.
Joel, I'm sorry.
No problem. Yeah, Doug Swearis is on vacation this week. I do have people in the back that can help me if I misspeak, so feel free to correct me. This is part of a grant we received from the state of Michigan to identify lead service lines in the city. Potholing is a big Vector truck that pulls up, shoots some water down. exposes the earth, so we can inspect the connection between the main and the house and determine whether or not it is lead or galvanized pipe. So the bids came in, the low bid was 105,788 from Plummer's Environmental, so it's recommended that we award the contract to them. Any questions?
Is this covered under our, I don't remember the name of our grant that's covering our lead
So
replacement?
this is not part of the Booker funds
Booker
we
funds,
received.
that's
This is a separate grant we received.
Oh,
So our Water Utilities Department and our partners with Abbott Marsh have been very successful in securing some significant state funding for, our Water Utilities Department, and we're thankful for that.
great.
Is this a match grant at all, Joel, or this is like 100%?
It's 100% reimbursement.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to approve the purchase order for Plummer's Environmental for the amount of $105,788.
I'll second.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11E, Public Works. 11E1, request to authorize a purchase order for Westling Services LLC for 2023 through 2026 downtown winter snow clearings contract in the total amount of $82,500. Doug, please.
And the request is to reject the low bid of Templeman Services. We received bids recently, 3 bids. Let me back up one more. Earlier this year, we advertised for bids for the streetscape sidewalk snow clearing. We received no bids. So we thought about purchasing equipment and doing it in-house with DPW and utility staff. And then we also decided to rebid it. So we rebid it, got the 3 bids in. Templeman Services did not submit a bid bond, so we recommend you reject that bid and award it to Westling Services for a 3-year contract. Westling is $27,500 a year. For 3 years, that'd be $82,500. Looking at it, last year, we paid Cronk for 16 site visits. The bid is an estimated 25 site visits at $1,100 a site visit. So last year was $600 for 16 visits, $9,600 total for clearing. Cronk also applied a liquid de-icer to it. We're not gonna put a liquid on it this year, just because we have the new concrete and we have that new brick patio that's going down there. So we recommend reject one bid and award it to Westling. And just for what it's worth, the equipment that we looked at was about $76,000 to purchase it, and it was 1 to 2 month delivery time. Which would put us in November or December, it's pushing the timeline, so.
On this, are we only paying per site visit, or is it just an overall, we pay this much per year?
Pardon me?
On the actual payment out, are we only paying per site visit, or is it just, we're paying this total whether you come one time or 20 times?
Per clearing,
clearing.
$1,100 per clearing, per visit.
So
So if he comes in the morning and clears, and it's the 2-inch minimum, he comes in the morning and clears 2 inches off, we pay him that dollar amount, he comes in later, he's asked to come in later in the day because it's snowing quite hard, we pay him for another site visit.
You said we're not gonna use the liquid de-icer. Will we use rock salt, or how will we do, what would we do for ice?
Weston would just clear it. What he's thinking is a broom or a blade. A blade would have a rubber or a composite blade on it, not a steel one, because they don't want damage to the uprights or the new pavers that are gonna be in.
Okay.
Just real quick, and some background information on that liquid de-icer. We had several building owners complain to us about the potential damage that does to their brick work against the sidewalk, and the staining of the brick and the windows as well. And for them to clean their windows afterwards was quite, a task for them. That's another reason why we took that liquid de-icer off the program this year.
That de-icer's also affected some limestone building fronts right across the street. You can see it on the lower couple feet where it's chipped off.
So are we just hoping that business owners put down something to de-ice?
Yeah, so we'll discuss this during one of our downtown lowdowns, as well as going out and talk to the business owners that, if they want to throw salt on there, they can. When we plow in our neighborhoods, we don't throw salt on the neighborhood sidewalks when we plow there, so this is really no different than what we do in our residential neighborhoods, except we're gonna contract this out instead of having DPW staff do it.
Currently, the ordinance, I think, still has that they're responsible for it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It does.
For years,
Okay.
we were responsible for it.
Any other comments? Okay, could we get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase order for West Lane Services.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 11E2, request to authorize a purchase order for Scott Engineering for the design of a water main anchor on the Second Street Bridge in the amount of $6,000.
Last winter, we had the water main break, I think, right, Mike? On the bridge, and you can see where the pressure of it, the reaction of it just separated some pipes and blew it apart. And you can see where it did torque a couple of those U-bolts that hold it down. Those are the anchors that hold that pipe in place. It should be a straighter line. Generally, there is some deflection that's allowed in a pipe like that, depending on the pipe diameter. This far exceeds that. Plus, if you walk and look at it, you can see where the pipe was visibly separated. So what we're asking here is that we engage Scott Civil Engineering Company, who does our biannual bridge inspections, to design an anchor system for anchoring the new water main to the existing horizontal cross members on the bridge.
I thought we abandoned this pipe.
Right, yeah.
We did, but they had to bring it back because of the water pressure issues.
Yeah.
That it was causing pressure issues in the
Right.
pipe system. And that was why it wasn't gonna be abandoned, that it was said that we'd replace it. If I remember right.
Yeah, Zach, our water plant manager, you can actually watch on our SCADA, the water towers move back and forth, and we're having some problems in some residential areas that the meters are reading forwards and backwards and actually getting a negative reading. So the new meters are so sensitive that in Lake, the further out, they're fluctuating. So this will help alleviate that problem.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve for Scott's Engineering to engineer the new pipe holders.
I'll support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11E3, request to declare a street sweeper and power washer as surplus items to be sold at auction. I did the same thing when I was reading it to myself. Doug,
I did the
please.
same thing when I typed it. These two units were replaced earlier this year. If you recall, we got a demo model Pelican street sweeper that we use, and that's in service and working quite well. And the gas-powered washer that got replaced earlier, and this one that we're asking to get rid of just extended beyond repair. So we're asking permission to auction them off. And folks, I think it's a village of Vicksburg, or city of Vicksburg, they're interested in the street sweeper. So we'll let them know that if it's approved, that we'll be auctioning it.
I make a motion to declare the street sweeper and power washer as surplus to be sold at auction.
Second.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Next is 11F, City Manager and City Clerk. 11F1, request to adopt Resolution 23.29 to approve the establishment of an early voting precinct. Michaela?
Yes, I can take this one. So as a requirement from the passage of Proposal 2, which was on the ballot in 2022. Early voting is now going to be available for all Michigan voters. And one of the requirements in being compliant with the state law is that we establish an early voting precinct. This will be separate from the 2 precincts that are on site on election day. And as noted in the agenda, or in the memo rather, we will be required to do 9 days of early voting that run consecutively, ending the Sunday before Election Day, starting with the presidential primary, which is coming up in just a few months. So I got this resolution straight from Allegan County, and many municipalities, if not all of them, are having their board or council adopt a very similar resolution.
Any questions for Michaela? Yes.
Have we reached out to other municipalities to partner on these early voting days?
That was definitely something that I debated, excuse me. But ultimately, it seemed to me that it wasn't worth it for the city, with us just being so unique in the fact that we get confused a lot with Allegan County. And so I figured that there would be a lot more confusion with sending our voters elsewhere potentially, or having other voters come here when it comes to election day voting. And coupled with that, it just seemed like it would be a lot more confusing as well, just with, you know, at least if I'm managing the early voting in-house and just doing a single municipality type early voting situation, I kind of have my eyes on what's going on every single day, and I just feel more comfortable with that.
My only question would be, of course, anybody that comes in for early voting, they'll be updated in the poll books for on the day of vote, so that they'll be
Yes.
noted down as already voted.
Yes, that's correct.
All right.
That kind of goes with my question, Michaela. So
Sure.
you're saying you're establishing a precinct?
Mhm.
That would just be, they had already voted, so they are part of that early voting precinct at that point? Or how does that?
Somewhat, yes. Yep. So we would still be using the e-poll book, and it would note in the comments, if you were to select a voter, that they already received a ballot.
Any more questions? Okay.
Make a motion to adopt Resolution 23.29.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11F2, request to approve a contract with Professional Code Inspections of Michigan Incorporated to perform administration and enforcement of the City of Allegan rental housing program and associated fees. Joel?
Thank you, Mayor. As one of your council goals this year is to restart the rental inspection program. As council's been updated before, we had some conversations with some other agencies, but thankfully we're able to work with Professional Code Inspections of Michigan to agree to a contract to perform this service for us. As you know, PCI is our current building official for the city. They're also our planning and zoning administrator as well. Earlier this evening, you adopted Chapter 7 as part of those block of ordinances or block of chapters you adopted. Chapter 7 has our residential rental inspection program in it. So we are asking you tonight to approve the contract with PCI to perform administration and enforcement of the City of Allegan's rental inspection program. It is a one-time onboarding fee of $10,000 and an annual fee of $5,000 going there after that. That's what the city will pay. The landlords will pay the registration fee, $50, and then the inspection fee of $65. So we did a little breakdown, After the year 1 through 3, the increase to a unit would be $3.19 a month. And then after year 3, it's $1.80 a month. We've already transferred them our list of properties we have through our BSA database. BSA is the software we use for our property database of all the properties we believe that are rental units based on the PRE status and the assessing class, as well as a list of all of our apartment complexes that are in the city. So this first, year to 2 years, there's gonna be a lot of legwork on their end, just identifying the properties. We gave them a good starting point, but
Is the inspection fee per unit or per building?
per unit.
Okay.
Some cities, when they do the fee schedule setup, they make you pay an annual registration fee. Every year, you have to register your property. And then the ones that just do this one-time registration fee, they make you pay it per unit when it's time for inspection. So,
How will we make sure this program is effective?
so we're gonna make sure this program is effective by identifying the number of properties that get registered, and then the number of properties that are compliant with the International Property Maintenance Code, or Housing Code. I sent council some pictures of a house at 105 Elm Street. That gentleman has contacted me 3 times requesting to turn the water back on because he wants to clean the inside, when clearly it's more than cleaning. There are structural deficiencies in that property. And he has to go through PCI and submit the plans on how he's gonna, shore the walls up, the ceiling up, and the foundation. So that is how we're gonna probably really measure its effectiveness is, the number of properties that are brought up to code through the rental inspection program.
Any other questions on this?
Joel, how, is this a set period of time contract, or?
No, this is what you call an evergreen contract. So, just like our contract is with them right now for building inspections.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Okay, if there's no more questions, could we get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract with professional code inspectors to perform administration and enforcement of our rental housing program.
I support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is communication from city manager, council, and mayor. We'll start with, I guess, Doug, do you have anything else you need to, or Mike, anything? Thank you. Michaela?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Thank you, Parker?
I've got a few things, if you don't mind.
Go.
First, I just want to say that I attended the Allegan's Friends of Oakwood Cemeteries group. They held a dedication for Private David Silence yesterday. Private Silence was a Black Civil War veteran who spent his final years in Allegan and was laid to rest in an unmarked grave at Oakwood Cemetery. And so the ceremony that took place yesterday was very wonderful. The city got a nice acknowledgement from the group. And I just wanted to acknowledge that work done by that group in coordination with the Sons of the Civil War Veterans group, Son of Union Civil War Veterans, I should say. And so it was just a very nice ceremony, great turnout too. And then I wanted to make the council aware of the Allegan Public Schools groundbreaking ceremony that's taking place this Friday at 5 o'clock. This is the groundbreaking ceremony for their new elementary school complex. If you would like to attend, it will happen at that property, which is located just at the end of Sunset Drive. And then I also wanted to point out that the downtown Allegan businesses are hosting a shopping event also this Friday, from 5 to 8 p.m., just extended shopping hours. There'll be different prizes and sales and specials at participating businesses. That's their Moonlight Madness event that they do this time of year around Halloween. And then lastly, the City of Allegan is partnering with the Allegan Lions Club to host a fundraiser. It'll be a joint fundraiser, so 50-50 split of admission sales and sales from the bar there for a show of Escanaba into Moonlight at the Griswold at 7 o'clock on Friday, October 20th and 21st. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Parker. Joel, do you have anything else?
Nothing to add.
Thank you. Bill?
I do not.
David?
One thing I wanted to say, I think if what happened to Mr. Jones happened to any of us up here, we would also be upset. That's all I want to say about that.
Delora?
Nothing tonight?
Mike?
Nothing from me.
Peter?
Nothing for me.
Roger?
Nothing from me.
And I don't have anything. So it is 7:51. We will adjourn the meeting.
Dolores, you got a lot to say 2 weeks ago about a letter that was sent to me. Did you